Chapter 5. TJ, the Woodsman. TJ, the Woodsman. His name and the names before him meant hunter, and it fit him. In the way he moved through the world, curious and drawn toward experience rather than comfort. He had fallen in love with humanitarian work after his first trip to South America, helping underprivileged communities. Something about serving in tough places had settled into him and never left. Later, he spent 3 months in Southeast Asia on a short-term assignment. He loved every part, the unpredictability, the people, the constant shift between chaos and beauty. As a long-term worker, they assigned me to help orient him, show him how the field worked, what daily life required, and how to navigate the undercurrents that no training manual ever covers. From the beginning, he listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and adapted swiftly. He carried himself with a serene confidence that never felt arrogant, but even-keeled, as if he trusted he would figure things out as they came. We became close almost immediately. Friendship came easily, without effort or pretense. When work slowed, we slipped naturally into exploring. We hiked narrow jungle trails and dusty mountain paths, chasing whatever small adventure the day offered. We searched out street vendors and hidden food stalls, sometimes pointing randomly at menus neither of us could read, and laughing when the plates arrived. Late at night, we sat on plastic stools along crowded side streets, sipping cheap drinks while watching the city's energy around us, motorbikes weaving through traffic, vendors calling out, music drifting through the humid air. TJ had a way of being fully present in those moments. He noticed details most people rushed past, stray dogs wandering through alleys, the way children played games using bottle caps, the rhythm of a city settling down long after midnight. He carried an ease that made tough places feel lighter, not because he ignored hardship, but because he met it without panic or resistance. Within weeks, he stepped naturally into the team leader role. His workload matched the rest of ours, and he carried it with competence. He did not chase authority or recognition. He simply worked hard, listened well, and earned trust quickly. Watching him lead never felt like watching someone trying to prove themselves. It felt like watching someone standing exactly where they were. Too soon, his 3 months ended, and he returned to America to step back into the responsibilities waiting for him there. The transition felt abrupt, like closing a book mid-chapter. A few weeks after he left, TJ asked if I would be open to seeing whether our friendship could become something more. Work immersed me, and I was still adjusting to long-term field life. Looking back, I know the timing was wrong, but more honestly, I was not ready for a relationship of any kind. My life felt full, almost overflowing, with purpose and responsibility. The idea of adding emotional commitment felt like adding weight to a pack I was still learning to carry. I told him no, gently and directly, and asked if we could remain friends without things becoming complicated or strained. TJ was the kind of man who adjusted to change the way surfers adjust to waves, not fighting the current, not forcing direction, simply riding what came with balance and patience. He accepted my answer without pressure, without distance, without resentment. That alone said more about his character than anything he could have argued. We stayed friends. Life carried us in different directions, as it does. Distance, responsibility, timing, and seasons stretched the space between us, but never fully broke the connection. We stayed in touch through emails, handwritten letters, and occasional phone calls that often began awkwardly and ended with laughter. Years passed. We would reconnect, share updates, and then drift again into separate lives. In hindsight, I realize he remained in my life like an anchored horizon always there even when I was not consciously gazing at it. A decade later, everything shifted. We reconnected online, easily, casually, exchanging updates, as if no time had passed at all. Technology had changed. Communication was no longer rare or fragile overseas. Messages arrived instantly instead of months later. Somewhere in that reconnection, something in me stirred awake in a way I had not expected. For the first time, I truly saw him. The only way I can describe it is that he caught my attention and held it there. I scrolled through his photos, lingering longer than I intended. He was kayaking through rough water, hiking exposed ridgelines, and camping beneath vast skies. He still wandered through the world with that same grounded curiosity I remembered. But now I saw something deeper in it, a certainty that settled somewhere inside me. He had always been there in the background of my life. I simply had not been ready to see him that way. The season had not been right until, almost without warning, it was. Our conversations shifted, and what began as simple catching up stretched into long exchanges that flowed easily from one day into the next. We laughed often, we spoke openly. Trust rebuilt itself as if it had only been waiting for permission to return. Alongside that comfort came something new. Desire slipped into the spaces between conversations. Curiosity followed close behind. There was a growing awareness that this was no longer just friendship. This was someone who could stand beside me in chaos and adventure, but also in the long stretches where life slows and truth surfaces. I will admit, I pursued him. Not impulsively, but deliberately. 10 years had passed since we first crossed paths, and time has a way of clarifying what matters. I've always been someone who thinks carefully before stepping forward, to sit with decisions and test them against instinct and logic. But when my heart and mind reach the same conclusion, I navigate without hesitation, clean, certain, like pulling a bandage off in one motion, rather than prolonging the sting. My life had crossed paths with a handful good men on the mission field. Some would have matched the field life perfectly, capable and deeply committed to service. On paper, they made sense. But none of them settled into my heart. None of them held my attention the way he did. With him, something shifted unmistakably. I listened differently, noticing details I might have once missed, feeling a pull that was both grounding and unsettling at the same time. I have never been comfortable circling conversations or hiding behind suggestions. Honesty has always felt kinder than hesitation. Eventually, I brought up the moment years earlier when he had asked whether there could be something more between us. I had not been ready to consider it. Now, I told him plainly that my feelings had changed. I asked him where he stood, knowing the answer mattered more than protecting my pride. He admitted he had sensed the shift as well. He chose his words carefully, but he was open, willing to see where the path might lead. That conversation did not rush us, but it opened a door that had once been closed. It gave us a place to speak honestly, while still respecting boundaries we both understood would require patience and care. A few months later, TJ and I arranged my flights so that I would arrive in his city. It would be the first time we had seen each other in person after over 10 years. By then, we had crossed fully out of friendship and into a committed relationship, openly talking about a shared future. Not in vague terms or hopeful language, but in practical conversations about timing, work, distance, and what it would actually look like to build a life together. When I arrived, he stood waiting in the arrivals hall, holding a single rose. He looked exactly like himself, known and new all at once. Everything I had not even noticed I had been waiting for was suddenly standing right in front of me. The noise of the airport faded into the background. There was no rush, no nerves, only a certainty settling into place. We spent several months together. Ordinary days mattered just as much as the big ones. 1 week into my stay, TJ planned a day at an extravagant creative playground built inside a reclaimed industrial building. It was a maze of art, architecture, tunnels, slides, ladders, and hidden passageways, designed for both children and adults who refused to stop exploring. The design was a mixture of sculpture, adventure, and wonder at every turn. It carried an energy that invited curiosity and play without rules or expectations. It matched us perfectly. Curious, playful, unafraid of getting lost. We climbed, crawled, laughed, and took wrong turns on purpose, on a day when time disappeared. That night, we scaled onto the roof. The city stretched out beneath us, lights scattered in every direction. Fireworks burst in the distance from a nearby building, unexpected and beautiful. We sat close, legs dangling, saying very little. Sitting there under the open sky, TJ asked me to marry him. There was no speech, no build-up. I said yes without hesitation. It felt less like a decision and more like recognition. We were officially engaged. We talked about getting married in my home country of England or perhaps in Ireland. Southeast Asia would have been somewhat spectacular, but visas, paperwork, and passports quickly became complicated. Making the marriage official, there and then translating and registering the documentation in both the UK and the United States for the future, added another layer of complexity. My tourism company and long-term visa status in Asia also required ongoing legal compliance and formal approvals in order to remain there. It mattered to both of us that we follow the proper formalities and ensure everything was above board and in order. So 6 weeks after that, we were married. It was a small, simple church wedding with TJ's church community. His family was there, mine was not. However, the absence did not overshadow the day. It was sudden, but it was honest. And it was very much how I lived my life. I never needed fuss or spectacle. I would have been happy marrying anywhere. His church handled everything. I was grateful for the simplicity of it all. I had never imagined a wedding day in the way many women do, with a vision of white dresses, grand aisles, and crowds of expectant faces. My excitement was never about a single day, but about the life that would follow. I looked towards mornings wrapped in calm togetherness, the kind where conversation flows easily or silence feels comfortable. I imagined the travels we might take, the little adventures that make a life feel full, and the freedom of being ourselves, with no one watching or judging. In the bridal shop, overwhelmed and irritated by price tags and expectations, one woman gently asked what women wore where I lived. I told her that red dresses were traditional. She smiled and disappeared, then returned, holding a deep crimson dress. That was it. I married an Asian red, with no family present. And it felt right. It felt like myself. Our plan had never been for me to stay in America. The intention was always for TJ to join me in Southeast Asia. We talked through logistics instead of romance, visas instead of vows, timelines instead of fantasies. After 2 months, I had to leave. It was the honorable thing to do. I boarded a plane back to Asia, leaving my husband behind. Not as an ending, but as the beginning of the life we had chosen. A few months later, I flew into the UK from Southeast Asia and spent time with my parents, easing back into a family tempo that felt both close and slightly foreign after so long away. Our plan was to reunite in England. TJ flew in from America a week later. After nearly 3 months apart, seeing him again at the airport was electric. Relief, joy, and longing collided all at once. We held each other like people who had learned, what absence costs. It was deeply human. The embrace that settles something long, held in tension. We spent time with my family while we were there, giving them space to celebrate with us, without the stress of international travel or rushed logistics. That time mattered in a way the wedding itself never could. My brothers traveled from Canada with their families and arrived that same week. My two sisters and my parents were already waiting in the UK with their families. That was what mattered most to TJ and me. Not tradition for tradition's sake, but presence. Not spectacle, but time. The space to be known as we were, not as a version arranged for a single day. TJ and I flew together to Southeast Asia and began our life as a married couple, stepping into a mission-filled life side by side. TJ and Jedi, my dog, bonded almost immediately, although neither of them fully understood the other at first. Jedi's greatest loves in life were simple: balls and water, preferably both at the same time. Jedi had come into my life several years earlier. He was a Tibetan Mastiff and Labrador mix that I found at a pet market in Asia. He was the last male of his litter and the runt no one wanted. In parts of Asia, dog meat is still considered a delicacy, and black dogs are especially prized. Seeing that small black runt sitting there made the decision for me. I could not leave him there knowing where he might end up. I took him home and gave him a chance. What started as a simple rescue slowly became one of the most loyal companions of my life. For 4 years, he walked beside me through that season. One afternoon, not long after TJ arrived, we took Jedi out to a large open field near our home. I was handling a work phone call, half listening, half watching from a distance as TJ threw Jedi's favorite ball across the grass. Jedi launched after it with his usual unstoppable enthusiasm. TJ laughed, impressed by his speed and determination, and threw it again. And again, work and play blended together the way they often did in that life. I trusted TJ with him and stayed focused on the call, only glancing up occasionally to see Jedi sprinting across the field and TJ throwing the ball farther each time. TJ did not yet know that Jedi had absolutely no ability to stop himself. If the ball kept moving, so would he. Eventually, Jedi chased one throw across nearly the entire field and did not come back. TJ called for him, waiting, then started walking toward him. I noticed the stillness and ended my call. We both walked out and found Jedi collapsed in the grass, ball still clutched proudly in his mouth, chest heaving, completely spent. TJ's face dropped. He thought he had hurt Jedi. I knelt beside Jedi, checked him quickly, and smiled, reassuring TJ that this was not an injury. This was Jedi. He simply did not know when to stop. We carried him back to the truck and drove home. Jedi barely lifted his head the entire ride. Once inside, he collapsed onto the floor, snoring deeply within minutes. He slept for nearly 12 hours straight, as if nothing in the world could wake him. The next morning, he bounded out the door as if the previous day had never happened, ball already in his mouth, ready for another round. From that day on, Jedi followed TJ everywhere, somewhere between exhaustion and laughter. They became inseparable. TJ and I became close with an indigenous couple where we were living. Raba and Jani came from different tribal backgrounds within a larger indigenous group. They carried mixed heritage and old bloodlines layered with history. Visually, they looked like an Asian and native Indian mix, with a wild edge that reminded me of cowboys in a place that had never known them. TJ fit into that world effortlessly. His skin stayed tanned, his nose sharp, his presence unmistakable. People sometimes asked if he had Native American blood. He did not, but when he wore his cowboy hat, it appeared the land had made it for him. Somehow, he belonged there too. He and Raba connected immediately, like men who had known each other in another life. Raba had not always lived the life we knew him in. Before family, before faith, before friendship, he had been a Buddhist monk. One day, sitting on temple grounds, he found a Bible wedged between seats. No one handed it to him. No one preached. He simply picked it up. For nearly 10 years, he carried that Bible with him, weaving it into everything else he studied. The stories and the men in them appealed to him, but Jesus drew him in the most. Not the miracles or the spectacle, but the way Jesus loved. One day, a passage about the greatest love being the willingness to lay down one's life for another went straight through him. Alone, he prayed. Fully and entirely, he became a Christian. Raba left Buddhism quietly and lived as a Christian just as quietly for many years. He also lived in exile from his homeland before eventually returning to his people. There he met Jani. They married, built a life, and raised a family. They lived their faith in a country that was atheist, animistic, or Buddhist, on the same ground he had once left and then chosen to return to. One night, TJ and I sat with them around a fire. Raba had cooked spicy yak with soybeans and a tongue-numbing spice that made your mouth feel strange and then crave more. The meal tasted like the place itself, strangely perfect. We talked late into the night about culture, faith, fear, loss and hope. TJ fit in naturally, listening, laughing, offering insight, present with no need to lead or impress. It was a night of connection, ordinary and extraordinary at once. They continued to become great friends through the years. Life looked different from most missionary organizations or NGOs, not better, just different. There were no compounds, ministries, or strict budgets to operate from. Neighborhoods and friendships became home. There was no sense of carrying ourselves like visitors with task lists. Life felt like a choice to stay. We followed our hearts. We loved Asia. It was never a job. We did not go to conquer or convert. We went to live, to make a home, to share meals, to listen, to be present, and to sit in the dark with people and stay. Faith showed up in how we loved. Marriage opened my heart in ways I had never known. Living overseas, far from family, among different cultures and languages, I had learned to keep parts of myself guarded, not out of coldness or secrecy, but out of habit. People saw the surface of me, direct and black and white. The deeper parts, my desires and longings, stayed behind a high stone wall with a heavy gate. Sharing life with TJ meant opening that gate and letting someone in. I shared my inner world without reservation. Still, there were moments when the walls tried to rise again out of instinct. TJ usually noticed first. He would laugh and say it sounded like a cement mixer starting up, and he was almost always right as I was in the midst of building that wall. He had a way of keeping me balanced and reminding me not to retreat into the structure I once needed. The mission field allowed us to spend nearly every day together. We did not leave for separate jobs and reunite on weekends. Most people might not like that closeness, but it was the only way I understood marriage. Living separate daily lives would have broken something in me, and TJ felt the same. We shared our days fully. I protected my husband and our home, placing his interests alongside my own. When he did the same for me, we built something mutual and deeply rooted. That balance went both ways. We did not take our marriage outside of itself. Even in frustration, we did not complain about each other to friends or family. Protection mattered. That principle was a foundation in our marriage and continues to hold fast in any deeply committed relationship. We loved and breathed each other, our lives intertwined at every level. I never understood stories of men disappearing on fishing trips or women planning girls-only getaways as escapes. We shared our lives completely. Even the small routines, the early mornings, the market trips, and the evening walks were ours together. Living this way taught us perspective. A single question often measured peace. If I never saw him again, would this argument matter? Life overseas reminded us daily how fragile time could be. Scooter rides carried risks, buses climbed mountain gravel, with little margin for error. Danger was often part of ordinary life, and minor disagreements lost importance rapidly. Witnessing hardship reshaped our understanding of struggle. I met children scavenging for food on trash heaps. Families walked miles for water that still made them sick. Women with children faced impossible decisions just to survive. I met a man living outside his village because of leprosy. We brought him supplies, and without thinking, I hugged him. He lit up, aching for human connection. Moments like that, seeing suffering and reaching across it, reordered what deserved my energy and attention. That understanding, learned in the bones and heart, rather than in words, became the measure of a life worth living.